You may find this hard to believe, but there was a day when people thought going to the moon was impossible. It might have even been in your lifetime. Is there anyone who grew up during a day when going to the moon sounded impossible? Yeah, look at that. And what do you know? We've been there, done that, easy. But it took people with vision, when they were told, you can't make it to the moon, they said, sure we can. Vision is important. Vision helps you do what other people think can't be done. But I'll tell you about another man who had tremendous vision. His name was Walter Disney. We know him as Walt Disney. There he is right there. He actually began to draw when he was in high school, and he drew cartoons for his high school newspaper. And now the reason I say that is especially for the teens. There's something that you love right now. There's something you're interested in right now. And you know, God has put that in you for a reason. God put this artistic ability in the life of Walter back when he was in high school to do big things. But anyways, that was his high school job, drawing for his school newspaper. Then he graduated. He started his first little business venture, and you know what happened to him? He went bankrupt. But that's not a bad thing, because we have to learn along the way how to fail and not stay down. So Walter Disney failed, and he got back up. But he needed a job, and so he moved to Kansas City. Got a job drawing cartoon strips and advertising. You know what? His job never got off the ground. If he would have stayed in Kansas City working in that little job, we never would have known of Walt Disney. His job was going nowhere. So he took his one valuable possession, which was a camera, he sold it, and got he and his wife a one-way ticket to California. So, Walter and his wife are heading out toward California, and he begins to sketch and begins to draw. He actually begins to draw a picture of a mouse with big ears and black pants. And he's drawing this mouse character, and he tells his wife, I'm drawing a new character. I'm going to call him Mortimer. And his wife says, Mortimer? That just sounds so stiff and too serious. Why don't you call him
Mickey Mouse?
Mickey! Hence, Mickey Mouse. So that goes back to his wife giving him the idea of Mickey. So he is now the proud owner, if you will, of this character, Mickey Mouse, who's about to do great things. We get to the year 1927, and Walter Disney goes to see a movie. It was actually called, are you ready for this? A talking movie. Everybody, ooh. But in 1927, that was a big thing. I believe it was called The Jazz Singer. So in 1927, the first talking movie comes out. But you know what he's thinking about while he's watching a talking movie? What if I took sound and put it with my cartoon character? See, he's a visionary. He begins to see what other people cannot see. 1 year later, 1928, he takes his cartoon character, Mickey Mouse, and pairs it with sound, and comes out with the first animated film that has sound, called Steamboat Willie. Check it out. It begins, he has this little toot-toot sound from his ship. Incredible sound with a cartoon. A few more years pass, and Walt Disney produces the first full-length color animated film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. You like Snow White? Isn't it amazing how old that movie is? And that was the first full-length animated film. And you know what? He didn't stop with one, because one was a hit. He did 2 and 3 and 4, did over 70 films. As some years pass, he is one day at an amusement park with his daughter. His daughter is getting on one ride after another, going round and round. And of course, as the dutiful father, he sits and waits till she's done to take her to the next one. And each time he puts her on a ride, and he sits down in the hot sun, bored. Because that's the way it was. Children ride the rides, parents sit down on benches, bored in the hot sun, waiting for them to finish to go to the next ride. But Walt Disney's a visionary. And while he's sitting there, he says, wouldn't it be nice if we had an amusement park, not where children got on rides and parents sat bored, but parents and children got on rides together. Interesting. Guess what he called it? 1955, Disneyland. And if your vision is good enough to see that original ticket, it says main gate admission, admit one child, 50 cents. He was out for the big bucks. Talk about a greedy man, right? The adult price was $1, children 50 cents. But it was all about parents and children going and having a good time and getting on the rides together. And now Disneyland is enormous. And of course, there's Disney World. It's enormous. They say one day 2 men were walking through one of Walt Disney's parks, and one said to the other, imagine if Walt was still here to see all this. And the response he got was, believe me, he saw it. You know what he meant by that? He was a visionary. He saw big things that didn't exist and said, you know what? They're big, they don't exist, and people say I can't do it, and guess what? I think I will. And so, I say take that analogy, that picture, that story, and begin to transfer it over to the local church. And I ask you, what is your vision for Union Cross Baptist Church? The average church attender's vision for the church really is just, I'm coming this Sunday, I'm coming next Sunday, and I'll come the next Sunday, and whatever happens, happens. Don't let that be your vision for Union Cross, that I just show up one Sunday and the next and hope for the best. Think, how can we get bigger? How can we get better? How can we get brighter? Have a vision. Look down the road 3 months. Look down the road 6 months. Look down the road next year. Look down the road 2 years. And say, how are we going to be bigger and better and brighter? Let's talk about vision. First point I want to give you is simply to define it. You can walk and go to a Christian bookstore and get a book or books, or multiple books on vision. Don't waste your money. You don't need all that. Vision simply means this: a mental picture of a desired future. Think up here and think in here, what do I want things to be like in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year? And then we're going to get to what do I do so that it'll be like that in 3 months, 6 months, and a year. But vision just means a mental picture of a desired future. So what do you want Union Cross to be like this time in 6 months or in a year? What do you want your own ministry to be like? Maybe you're a Sunday school teacher or you work with children. There's an area you're involved in. What do you want it to look like in 6 months or a year? The same? If you want it to be the same, just do the same things. If you want it to be a little better, do something a little different. So I guess we ask this question then: what does God desire for Union Cross Baptist Church? Ultimately, it's His church. So we would say, Lord, what do you want for this church? And He would say, impact this area. I put you right here for a reason. Impact this area. I put these people in this church for a reason. That each of them would impact their sphere of influence. Who does your life come in contact with? That's your mission field. Can you touch everybody? No. Can you reach everybody? No. Can you touch somebody? Yeah. Is there one person in your life, one person in your sphere of influence that you can touch? And the answer is yes. Ultimately, what God wants our church to do is simple: make disciples. Make disciples. That's what it goes down to. 2 verses here. And I'm going to ask you to read them out loud with me. Let your own brain, your own heart, hear your mouth say these words. Read it with me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. It goes on and Jesus says, and I'm with you always. So we don't go alone. It's that simple. Go and make disciples. Anything else that we do is second or third or fourth or fifth. Anything else we do that isn't making disciples is not as important as making disciples. So whatever it is you're involved in, first thing is make disciples. Second is whatever the other thing is. Mark 16:15. Read it with me. Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. That's how you make a disciple, right? You got to get God's word to them. Our vision, the definition of a vision is a mental picture of a desired future. We need to see ourselves as disciple makers. That we make a disciple who makes a disciple who makes a disciple who makes a disciple. That there's a growing chain. We reach one person who reaches a person who reaches a person who reaches a person. So the chain gets longer. And that's how you grow to get bigger and better and brighter. So you got that word definition. You know what the definition of vision is. Mental picture of a desired future. We got to have some kind of a design. Just like if you're going to build a house. You can't just walk to the lot and say, I'm going to build a house. Somebody might say, well, how big? Single story? 2-story? 3-story? What's it going to be like? You need to have some dimension, some design. So you draw it out, and you got some blueprints that get you there. So your vision has to have a design. In other words, how do you get it done? How do you grow? What do you do? And again, the design of building the church is not difficult. Meaning, when Jesus was going to build the church, he didn't say, this is so hard, I'm going to need an astrophysicist, and I'm going to need a microbiologist, right? And I'm going to need all these fancy PhDs to build a church. He said, I'm going to take these fishermen, take them out of the boat. I'll take this guy who's a tax collector, I'll take him, and I'm a carpenter, and I'm going to lead them, and we're going to get the job done. So in other words, the design is not very difficult to make disciples. It's just simply this. People reaching people. People reaching people. Why are you here today? Did somebody reach out to you? Somehow, somebody touched your life, and here you are. It's all about people reaching people. Sometimes, John chapter 1, it's just going to one other person. It says in John 1:40 and 42, the first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, we have found the Messiah, that is the Christ. And he brought him to Jesus. So Andrew met Jesus, and he said, you know what? I'm going to go tell one other person that I met Jesus. And he got Simon. What's Simon's other name? Peter. That's a pretty good catch. If God uses you to go out and catch a Peter, you really made a good find on that one, because Peter turned out to be somebody special. But it was just one guy going to one guy. And not just one guy going to one guy, it was going to his brother. Sometimes it's just going to a relative. Go talk to your brother. Go talk to your sister. Go talk to your cousin. Go talk to just somebody in your family. One person reaching one person. The next slide goes on in John chapter 1 and says this. The next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, follow me. Philip went and found Nathanael and told him, we found the one that Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Nazareth? Can anything good come from Nazareth? Nathanael asked. Come to see, said Philip. Again, one person goes to his buddy, right? Philip says, I'm going to go tell my buddy Nathanael, the one that Moses wrote about, the Messiah is here. And he went and told him, and you know what? He got met with a little bit of resistance. He's from Nazareth. That place is a dump. Nothing good comes from Nazareth. Did he argue with him? Did he try to convince him? You know what he said? You come and see. You come and see. Go to your buddy. Go to somebody that you know. And say, you know what? There's good things going on at our church. And they may say, well, the last church I went to, and then they give you an earful. And you know what? Don't try to make excuses for what happened and just say, you know what? Why don't you just come and see? Just come and see. So that's the design of working out a vision. People reaching people. One person. Go to one person. Go to one person and just say, come and see. Sometimes one person reaches many. Peter, on the day of Pentecost, stood up. Do you remember how many people got saved on Pentecost? 3,000. That was a big heist on that day of bringing people in. So sometimes one does reach many. More often it's one reaching one. Sometimes it's one person who takes the gospel into their home. Do you remember in Acts, there was a man from Philippi. He's called the Philippian jailer. We'll call him a correctional officer. That's more today's language. He's a correctional officer, and he is in charge of watching this horrible criminal named Paul. Paul's not a criminal. He's a good guy. But he watches Paul, and he ends up that night hearing the gospel from Paul, and he gets saved. You know what he says to Paul? You got to come to my house. He brings Paul to his house, and the guy's whole family gets saved and baptized. You can read about it in Acts chapter 16. Take the gospel into your home. Take the gospel to a stranger. Do you remember the story about a man named Philip? And God said, there's a chariot. And there's a man in this chariot from Ethiopia. Go and catch up to this chariot and talk to the guy inside the chariot. I'm assuming Philip, being a Jewish man, is our skin color. And the man in the chariot, being from Ethiopia, is a black man. So he's now going counterculture, if you will. Go see the black man in the chariot going down the road and stop him and talk to him. So Philip goes up to the chariot. He finds the Ethiopian reading none other than the scroll of Isaiah and says, do you know what you're reading? And the Ethiopian says, I don't know unless somebody explains it to me. You know what he did? Shared the gospel with him. Right there. And so, one person, go to one person. Don't let their skin color scare you. Don't let their economic status scare you. Go to somebody you know. Go to a relative. Go to a neighbor. Go to somebody. Go to somebody. One person reaching another person is the design. Tell somebody who doesn't even go to church. Tell them there's good things going on. You got to come hear about Jesus. A vision should be something that is dynamic in our life. In other words, it should energize us. If you say, I'm going to church this Sunday, and I'll probably go next Sunday, and I'll probably go the next Sunday. That's not very energetic. There's not much energy in that. But if you say, hey, we got another new family, and another new team, and another new child, and you're beginning to see new faces in class and new people in the pew, that is energizing. That should energize you when you have a vision to grow and you see it happening around you. So have a vision and work toward accomplishing people, and it will energize you. It will make you feel excited about showing up the next Sunday. And that person that you invited who said, I'm coming with you. And you say, Dad, this Sunday I'm going to get them there. And it gives you that feeling of excitement. Here in John chapter 4, very interesting words from Jesus. He said, my food, said Jesus, is to do the will of him who sent me and finish his work. Isn't that interesting to say, when I do God's will, that's my food? Who would ever describe doing God's will like food? Well, Jesus would. And he does it for a reason. Because when you sit down to a delicious table full of food, how do you feel? You say, oh, I love it. It satisfies me. Especially the dessert. Right? It sustains me. It energizes me. If you work for 3 or 4 or 5 hours out in the hot sun and you just feel drained, and then you sit down and you have a nice meal, something to drink, and a nice plate of food, your energy comes back. So Jesus says, when I do God's will, It energizes me. Well, God's will is that we make disciples. Let it energize you. It goes on and it says, don't you have a saying that it's 4 months until harvest? I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for harvest. So not only is doing God's will like food to Jesus, energizing him and sustaining him, he has a vision. He has a vision that other people don't have. He said, you know what? Other people say 4 months until the harvest. That means later, another time, another season. I got things to do right now, and the harvest isn't ready. Let's put it off. And Jesus says, forget this saying of 4 months until the harvest. I'm going to tell you when you should go out and look for somebody. Open your eyes. They're right when? Right now. Right now. So don't talk about later you're going to do something. Don't wait. The harvest is going to rot and die in the field. Go and get it. Go and do it now. So a little direction. A little direction. What's the easiest path from here to there? Right? We need direction. We're talking about people reaching people. So have this be your direction. As you look ahead, let's say this time next year, or this time in 2 years from now, how many people would you like to see in Union Cross in the next year or two? Well, remember about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, it was Easter. Wasn't that awesome?
Yes.
The choir was up here. They looked out, no place to sit, wall to wall, every seat filled. That was a pretty good number. But anyways, I want to say, why don't you make your vision? This is what mine is. I want to see us averaging 150 people. 150 people fills this room. So we're looking to grow within the next couple years to seeing 150 people. How do we do that? Let me give you two things. Two little points of direction that are very easy to remember. Number one is this. Go reach someone that you know. That's how you fill the place up for Easter. How many of you brought somebody that you know on Easter? So, yeah, you did. I mean, you had everybody you asked you to have, this is my daughter, and this is so-and-so, and this is so-and-so. You guys were constantly saying, introducing people that you brought. Go and reach someone that you know. Remember the last Sunday of December, or the first Sunday of January, I can't remember which one it was one of those two. We were talking about each one reaching somebody. And how many people stood up here saying, in 2018, and I'm one of them, so I was up here with you. In 2018, my goal is to reach somebody, to reach one person. Here's a reminder to me and a reminder to you. January is over, and February is over, and March is over, and April is half over. The year is flying by. And so, who are you going to reach out to? Reach out to somebody that you know. Work to bring them. Don't just invite. If they keep saying, yeah, I'll come someday, give a little bit more effort and say, I'll pick you up Sunday at give a time. Work to get them here. Work to reach out to them. Do a little bit more. It's been said, and this is probably a statement you'll remember forever. I know it sticks in my mind. The best way to get somebody to church is on the arm of a trusted friend. We put stuff in the newspaper, and I'm all about it. We got a new article coming out this week in Kernersville paper inviting our first responders. Any kind of advertisement we can do, any kind of outreach we can do, anything like that, any youth ministry is great. But the best way to get somebody to church is on the arm of a trusted friend. When a friend says, will you come with me? Come with me. I'll pick you up. And they walk in the door with you. That's the best way to get somebody here. So go reach somebody that you know. Second thing is this. Our first point of direction is reaching somebody you know. Our next point of direction is reach somebody that you don't know. Reach somebody you don't know. You know, we visited the neighborhood across the street. We didn't know people over there. We got to know them because we knocked on their door. And we said, hey, we're from Union Cross Baptist Church. We're your neighbors. we'd like to invite you to come over. And so we've been over there and gotten to know some of our neighbors. And not only have we gotten to know some of our neighbors are sitting right over here. They came from across the street, and they're now not only our members here, but our friends. And so we're going to do it again. We're going to go across the street to people that we don't know and invite them. Right? God put us here within eye shot of a beautiful neighborhood of hundreds of people to reach out, to be intentional about reaching people. Every time that we have a special outreach, be intentional about who can I bring. 1 week from today, we're going to have a first responders appreciation. I said last week, how many of you know policemen, firemen, EMS, etc., and hands were up everywhere. So this week, be intentional. Say, you know what? We're having a first responders appreciation. You got to come out. I'll pick you up. So whatever it takes, bring them here. Go and get them. And so be intentional whenever we have a special outreach to bring somebody here. I went on, I think it was Thursday or Friday, to the Kernersville Police Department. Just took a stack of invitations and said, hey, our church is going to have a first responders appreciation. Want to invite you out. Left them some invites. We had an article in the paper coming out this week. So that's some direction. Go to people you know and go to people you don't know. One person reaching somebody else. It's as simple as that. And the last point is probably the most important, and that's the word dependence. We got to depend on God. Remember this? Do you know the word spiritual warfare? You know that? Do you know that there's a real devil, and he hates you, and he hates your family, and he hates your friends, and he doesn't want you to do anything, and doesn't want you to reach anybody, and he doesn't want anybody being reached for Christ. This is real. Spiritual warfare is real. The devil is real. He's the enemy of your soul and your family's soul and everyone that you know. And war is not easy. People don't go out to war and come back and say, oh, what a piece of cake. I just kicked back and some bullets flew here and there and it was great. It was awful. It was horrible. It was difficult. It was sometimes discouraging and sometimes scary. Sometimes it wasn't so easy, right? So we got to depend on God and say, God, I'm afraid to talk to this person. Help me. Lord, it's getting frustrating. I don't know what to do. I want to bring them so bad, and it's just, they never seem to want to come. And so, depend on God. Pray for them. Matthew 9. Jesus said to his disciples, the harvest is great, and the workers are few. Pray to the Lord who's in charge of the harvest, and ask him to send more workers into his fields. Matthew 37 and 38. The harvest is great. Depend on God and say, God, we need you to help everybody to rise up and get somebody. To reach out to get one person. Lord, to do the Great Commission. And so depend upon God to help you. And pray for others. Pray for this church as all of us are feeling just like you are. Sometimes disappointed because the person didn't show up, and sometimes frustrated because we can't get somebody, and we're going through the same things. Pray for yourself, pray for the church that we can reach others. So here's the conclusion. Don't look at Union Cross Baptist Church that we're just going from one Sunday to the next, and whatever happens, happens. We're heading towards 150 each week. That's our goal. Fill these pews, have a full church each Sunday. We can do it. We're going to add one here. We're going to add one there. And as we do that, the pews will continue to fill up. So have a vision. We're heading towards a full house, 150 each week. And then say, how are we going to do it? By every one of us trying to reach one person. Simple as that, not confusing. Each one of us seeking to reach one more person. And then as a church, right, we're going to continue to plan outreaches like next week for the first responders. Like later on in the summer, heading back across the street, inviting all of our neighbors to come out. So we're not only going to be working as individuals, we're going to be working as a church.